Hello everyone, on this day, April 1st, 2020, I wish we could say this was a big joke, but unfortunately we know it's not. So my name is Grant Arnott. I'm the Managing Director and Publisher of Power Retail, and I'm going to be presenting today's session along with my colleague Mark Fletcher, our Insights Manager. Mark has put the majority of the data together for this presentation today. Mark's a seasoned veteran of market research with a focus on retail, so his insights we hope will be very valuable to you today. Today is not about false hope or solutions. It's certainly about bringing you the facts as we know them from the data that we've pulled together from consumers and from retailers and from analytics data as well. So we've surveyed over 3,000 retailers in the last month, particularly around this particular topic, COVID-19, which we're going to be talking through today, and also over 200 retailers just in the last 2 weeks to get what's happening in their world and your world, and understanding exactly what the implications are for them, so we can bring that to you as factually accurate as possible. And we'll also be drawing upon some data from Power Retail's benchmarking tool. We've got dozens of retailers with live analytics feeds in there, and that presents some very useful insights as to what's happening right now also. So we know that we are seeing and witnessing unprecedented catastrophic conditions for the world. Let's put retail aside for 1 second. I don't think any of us in our lifetimes have ever seen anything like this, and it has broad ramifications that we can't even pretend to comprehend. Again, what we're here to do today is bring you a snapshot of what we know is happening at the time, some insights as to what we think will happen in the immediate future and what the immediate ramifications are. But we will not be speculating. We don't think that would be doing this community a service. We just want to present the facts as we know them, and what we see the key trends in the short term are going to be. So this is just a broad snapshot of the current events worldwide. So what you're looking at here is just indications of the spread of coronavirus to countries around the world, and the number of cases that are emerging and the rate of acceleration. So you can see that the US has the highest rate of cases and has outpaced not only Italy in terms of total volume, but is on track to be the fastest, or already is the fastest growth in the world, and certainly going down a dark path. Where Australia sits is somewhere in the middle of all of that. You can see an indication that the curve is starting to flatten out, but it's certainly no indication whatsoever, and I'm not going to pretend to suggest that it is, that things are easing or that anything is going to ease in terms of the restrictions that are in place around social distancing and the impact it's having on business at the moment. That's purely just a snapshot of what's happening in the world right now. But in terms of what we know is happening in Australia, so we've seen already mass job losses. We've seen mass retail store closures, and we're continuing to see more every day. We've seen domestic and international travel restrictions already in place, and the travel industry brought to a complete standstill. We've seen a sudden dramatic escalation in restrictions on people's movement and social distancing. We have unknown timeframes on when or if normality is going to resume. We have the government offering financial support for businesses and individuals, and substantially increasing that daily, if not, or weekly, if not daily. We saw a substantial package rolled out yesterday in the terms of the JobKeeper allowance. And we also have consumer confidence in free fall, as you'd expect in times like these. The share market has been well down. It has stabilised in the last few days, but certainly the share market has been heavily impacted by this, meaning a shortage in working capital for businesses to operate from. Online shopping for essentials is experiencing soaring growth, and we'll talk to that momentarily. but online shopping for discretionary items is in decline. Even with the number of store closures that have happened recently, we're still not seeing consumers willing to shop online for discretionary items yet. And we want to talk about New Zealand. We'll come to this later on, but e-commerce in New Zealand has closed for delivery of non-essential items, and that retail sector over there is certainly grappling with that. And yeah, it has dire implications for the Australian market if we were to follow suit clearly. Okay, so first of all, let's look at the COVID-19 trends, the key ones in Australia, and we've got three components here. So we're looking from the 2nd of February through to Monday just gone, so the 30th of March. The red lines represent the rise in COVID-19 cases, and corresponding to that, the dark line, the dark chart there is the Roy Morgan Consumer Confidence line, and then also we have the top 100 visits to online retailers. So we use SimilarWeb to get that data. Thank you, SimilarWeb. So visits to the top 100 online retailers and how they changed in aggregate. And what we've seen associated directly with the rise in COVID-19 cases and the decline in consumer confidence, we've seen in the past 2 weeks a significant jump in visits overall to the Power Retail Top 100. Now that will not likely be the case for the fashion sector, but in aggregate, we've seen a significant jump overall in the index there. And the overwhelming bulk of that growth is in household essentials, FMCG, food, etc. So no secrets there, and staples like pet food and household items. And growth is also being driven temporarily, we know, by a significant portion of the workforce being directed to work from home. What we're looking at here is a snapshot of e-commerce revenue. So the blue line is 2019 for the same period. So again, we're looking at the 2nd of February right through to the 30th of March. So the blue line is reflective of e-commerce revenues. So the 0 is the average, and so the up or down against the average weekly benchmark for e-commerce revenues through that period. And so you can see some undulation through the past year. But what we're seeing this year, off the back of the bushfires, we saw a significant decline in mid-February. And then we've seen a steep decline from week 7, when we started to see things like the first Australian death from COVID-19. We also saw between the 9th and 15th of March, the number of cases in Australia double. The hoarding began. And even though there was a $17.6 billion stimulus announced, we still saw a decline in online shopping overall. And then we saw here a sudden spike from the 16th to the 22nd of March, where the travel bans have been enforced, working from home and social distancing rules have been applied. And we've seen a massive and sustained uptick over the last 2 weeks in online shopping overall. So store closures have happened, and that's where the second week here shows the impact of those store closures, but also the rush to online shopping to avoid being at stores because of the fear of coronavirus, and to grab those essentials for the home. And we've seen big impacts in those areas, and hasn't impacted all categories, but certainly has in those working from home related essentials, but even just the everyday essentials, people switching very quickly to online to change their shopping habits. What we have here is the intended online retail spending in the coming months. So what you see there across the top is from week 5, which was late February, down to week 9, which is where we are now, a significant decline in the number of, or a significant increase in the number of consumers intending to decrease their online spend. So in the middle there was significant awareness of COVID-19, but minimal cases. And 98% of online shoppers still were planning to spend either the same or more online at that point in time. That has changed remarkably over the last 4 weeks since COVID-19's really taken hold. And so during March, we saw a 30% swing from shoppers who planned to spend the same online to shoppers who planned to spend less online. And this week, the numbers planning to spend less online remained the same, but the numbers planning to spend more rose significantly with a wave of store closures. So as those stores are closing, people are acknowledging that they're going to have to spend more online in order to get what they need. When you take out the last 2 weeks, this is looking at week 8 specifically. And so what we're looking at here is the age breakdown across week 8 in terms of the propensity to either stay the same for the next month in online spending, increase online spending, or decrease online spending. When we break it down, we see immediately that the under 25 demographic is the most likely to decrease spending online. The older the demographic, the more likely shoppers are to increase their spending online. The over 45s are significantly more likely to spend more online in the coming months. And this is week 9 that we're looking at here. So you can see if you go back to week 8 and look at some of those charts there. So you've got the under 25s, 31% saying they'll decrease. In week 9, that's already jumped to 39%. So number of consumers decreasing their online spend in the under 25s category, far more precipitous, with 39% planning to decrease their online spending. However, when you look at the age groups 35 and above, this is the one promising indicator that we can release today, that the over 35s cohort, right through to the over 65s, have a steady week-to-week increase in numbers planning to increase their spend online in the next month. And that, of course, coincides with store closures. So there is an online market out there, but it's largely going to be in the over 35s, whilst we are looking at data that suggests that it's going to be very tough in the under 25s or even under 34s market if you are focused on that area. They are not, unfortunately, planning to spend money in the next month, and they're going the other way in a hurry. I'm now going to hand over to Mark to take you through the next few slides. And I didn't mention earlier, but I did have to postpone this. I could hardly talk yesterday, so I do appreciate everyone letting me off there, and we've got a great turnout today. And I'll give my voice a rest and hand over to Mark to take you through the next sequence. Thanks, Mark. Are you there, Mark?
That's better. Now I'm there. Sorry, I was muted for a moment. And thank you, Grant, for the handover. We're just going to start by looking at this data and the format that we've structured it in. So what we've got there is the grey bars, which are the benchmark, and that equates to the first week in February or week 1 in our set of data here. And then we've got in the red bars, week 8, and the black bars, week 9. So you're looking at from a benchmark and then what's just happened in the last 2 weeks. So very clearly what we've seen is an increase in those spendings of under 50. So this is the small items. They will be small food orders, a rise in monthly subscriptions and things of that nature. We've also got then at the other end, where there's been a significant decline. So that unfortunately is in those larger purchase values, and they've gone down, with the exception of a little bit of an improvement in week 9 in the over 25s. So it's a very interesting story and quite a change in some of the behaviour. If we're then looking at the next slide, this helps us to understand the discounts that are going on in the market at the moment. And these are very important to understand, because what we're seeing is that suddenly people they're changing the nature of things. So we're seeing they're less inclined to wait or seek discounts. So that's gone down from 55 as the benchmark, gone down quite markedly down to 46 and 49%. And similarly, their propensity to pay, the RR price has gone up. So there's a bit of also a relaxing of the number of discounts that are around by retailers, but more importantly, this is a time when consumers are saying, I'm going to buy what I need, and I'm not too fussed whether I have to pay for a discount or not on that. All right, so if we now look at the type of retailer that was used to make the purchase in the last week. So very importantly, we've restricted this data to those people who actually made a purchase in the last week. So again, if we think about a benchmark back at the start of February, we've got 39%. Now, multi-channel retailers have certainly seen an increase in these last 2 weeks, and that's been quite marked, and that's been largely at the expense of pure plays. So what we're seeing here is the foot traffic has left the shopping centres and headed for the online stores of those multi-channel retail brands. And that's, of course, happened just before the store closures, or in the time of the store closures in the last week. If we now move on to having a look at right, Grant, next slide, please. Great. All right, so what we're getting to grips with here is where people are having those purchases delivered to. Now, not surprisingly, as people are shifting to work from home, we're also seeing a dramatic increase in the proportion of deliveries made to home. That's been at the expense of work, notably, but generally the post office and everything. So people are abiding by that instruction from our governments, and that is to stay at home, and so the deliveries are going to home. Not unexpected, but it's certainly good to see the trend there that's happening. What we can also see there is that the click and collect has dropped significantly. And is sure to drop further as people try to stay in their own home and just basically make the best if they can in this situation. Right, what we're going to look at here is sorry, I'm getting on the right slide. What we're going to do now is hand back over to Grant, who will take you through this next set of data.
Okay, so fashion and beauty products decline against the average for consumers, as you would probably predict in this type of climate. So job losses and hits to businesses have completely cut down the discretionary spending. Predictably, as office workers have transitioned to working from home, there's a significant rise in the purchase of electronics, monitors, keyboards, dongles, etc., as well as fitness and sporting goods seeing a natural surge as well. Fear of going out has also transitioned shopping for essentials such as health products, food, drink, and house products online. What we're looking at here, this is the anticipated online retail spend in the next month across categories. So fashion is going to be the hardest hit category this month and next month, with 35% of online shoppers likely to spend less on fashion. Fitness and sporting goods have seen a short-term spike with the transition to working from home, and there's still plenty of intent to buy over the next month. Plus, people are keen to get outdoors as well, but it's also set to suffer with a 26% still planning to spend less in that category next month. And grocery and health products will be the online shopping winners over the next month, at least as housebound shoppers migrate those in-store everyday purchases into the online environment. In terms of the impact of COVID-19 on sales for retailers, so retailers are facing the ultimate extremes. So it seems that when we interview retailers, business is either going extremely well or extremely bad, and there's really not much middle ground. What we're showing here, week to week, there's been massive changes within the online market. So the black line represents the statistics from week 8, and the red line represents the statistics from week 9. And what you can see in week 9, unfortunately, 5% of businesses have moved into ceased trading mode, whereas 0% from those we interviewed the week prior. And the impact of COVID-19 on sales today is illustrated here in week 9 specifically. So what we're seeing here, this week has been the most extreme. So 5%, as I said earlier, businesses surveyed have ceased trading. 16% of retailers have witnessed online sales declines of greater than 50%, and 30% have collectively seen worse than 20% sales decreases. So between those two, there's some huge losses being experienced there. On the flip side, more online retailers saw significant leaps in sales. So we hear reports of retailers like Catch, and of course the grocery retailers recording significant jumps. So those who are in those categories are seeing huge returns at the moment. 32% have recorded increases above 20%. So 11% of those are reporting increases of 50% plus. And as at March 30, retailers are forecasting a largely grim outlook. So this is where we surveyed what the anticipated business situation in 1 month is going to be. So easy to see there that only 12% believe they're going to be better off than before, but 61% of businesses are predicting serious struggles ahead. And we've got 5% that believe they'll cease trading and 10% that believe they'll be temporarily halted. Of those, 22% predict they'll reduce in size, and the same predict they'll be experiencing severe financial difficulties throughout that period. 27% believe they'll be largely unchanged as a result of the coronavirus impact, and only 12%, as I said, believe that they'll be better off than before. And I'll now hand back over to Mark to take you through some of the impact of COVID-19 on category sales. Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks, Grant. I think this is really, for many of you retailers out there, this will be some of the findings that have been keenly anticipated. So the biggest decreases that retailers have talked to us about have been in fashion, there's 64%, and general merchandise, or which we put under the other category at 55%. There has been quite a remarkable increase in fashion brands who have seen an increase in sales, and this is more focused on the essential and family-oriented type areas of sleepwear, underwear, and kids wear. So despite some claims of fashion having been in a bad situation, there are some fashion areas which are still getting some improvement. But overall, I think we can see that it's been a pretty tough story for fashion retailers. If we look at electrical and sporting fitness goods, they've enjoyed a spike in online sales, but that may very much be just a short-term factor as we get people organising themselves for work from home. It's hard to anticipate how much longer that will continue. We have been very keen to look at the impact of COVID-19 on payment types to try and understand, have consumers taken their approach to credit under review given the circumstances. Now, as a payment type, credit cards appear to be faring the worst, with 29% of retailers reporting a decreased credit card sales. So that's quite remarkable. One of the interesting things, though, is if we look at buy now, pay later, has seen the biggest increase in sales as more consumers are seeking to defer payments, but also seen a significant decrease in sales as young consumers hold back on in purchases until they secure employment. So it's a twin-edged sword there. Some are going up, some are going down. Very important information. Now, there's been a lot of talk of what we want the government to do in response to these situations. And so when we asked retailers, we gave them a wide variety of options to indicate what they wanted the government to do. Not surprisingly, looking at the top, tax relief and financial support are overwhelmingly the desired responses. So that's online retailers are very clear in what they want. Interestingly, though, retailers don't see reductions in interest rates as having any impact on stimulating spending. I think that relates to a very direct view in retailers' minds of what actually brings sales. It's something about money in the pocket now. That's how most retailers view as what's going to stimulate their sales. If we're moving on to the sales channels, sales strategies, again, when we spoke to retailers, they had a really wide range of options. Importantly, 17% saying it's business as usual. They are just getting on with the job. However, that leaves everyone else making some changes. So the strongest thing that people are doing is that 47% who are focusing on engaging with their customer base with advice and information. That's getting out there saying we're still in business or we're doing this to adapt to a situation. And I think we'd all agree that customers always appreciate being kept informed. And so we can see a lot of retailers are following that strategy. Another 39% are fine-tuning their product offers, and 38% are holding sales promotions to entice those value-conscious buyers. And again, that seemed to be a very clear strategy. Interestingly, there's only 29% who are actually increasing their advertising spend. So most of these strategies are around things which don't actually involve them spending more money. Another interesting finding was that very few are reducing prices across the board. So only 8% of retailers are actually engaging that sort of massive sale type of strategy. All right, so moving forwards for our retailers, we tried to understand what they would see as the most important things for them to do and how they could address this situation. Now, not surprisingly, 72% of retailers are saying reducing operating costs wherever possible. And that would always be the best response for any retailer. What we're also, though, seeing is over half are moving their head office or other staff to remote working. And we've again seen many examples of where that's happening. 39% are planning to delay capital expenditure, which will stifle growth. So it's a very interesting strategy, and I know that must be a balancing point for for many of those online retailers, saying, well, how much can we delay? How much will that affect us along further into the future? So there's a wide range of strategies there, but very much the top thing is reducing operating costs. I'll now hand back to Grant to take you through some more findings.
Thank you, Mark. So the biggest thing we wanted to focus on is, okay, this is a scenario of what's happening, what could happen, and we look across the ditch to the New Zealand scenario and what that means for online retail in Australia. So what we know is happening is that stores are closing down. People are being told to stay home, so they're not going to go out and visit shopping centres. So those who have store networks are going to have to shut their stores, or their stores are pretty much non-productive at the moment because people aren't going out to stores. That's with the exception of essential items, clearly. And so what we're going to see is a migration fast to online, and we've already shown that's happening. And so the only outlet for those with store networks to make sales currently is going to be through online channels. But as we've seen in New Zealand with the advent of level 4 restrictions that were imposed last week, that e-commerce in New Zealand is closed currently for delivery of non-essential items. Even retailers like Domino's are not even able to deliver pizzas because it's considered non-essential food items. The Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment is still grappling with the definitions of essential versus non-essential. Even yesterday, they were revising what was considered essential items to include goods such as heaters and blankets that will keep people warm, key household appliances, so some white goods, whiteware, computers are going to be allowed. So there's no playbook for this, we know that. So it's unfolding in real time, and the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment in New Zealand is certainly trying to grapple with the same things that everyone else is over here in terms of definitions. Where Australia is at is currently at COVID-19 level 3 restrictions with no current guidance as to when, if we would move to level 4. In terms of the impact if we did move to level 4, so non-essential e-commerce represents just on 80% of total e-commerce spend in Australia. What that would mean if we did go to a New Zealand scenario within the next few weeks or the next month, it could wipe out, if it was annualized, $25 billion a year minimum of e-commerce revenue. So, and if you consider how much revenue will be going online, if you take out the stores, and the stores now have no outlet other than online, and that channel is cut off as well, the impact is going to be absolutely catastrophic, far beyond $25 billion a year just in the online revenue, considering that we would expect to see a significant migration of dollars spent online against offline dollars. Even if it was a 2-month scenario, so an April-May scenario of New Zealand restrictions would be a $4 billion minimum hit. And we have reached out to various logistics partners and obviously Australia Post with the largest network in Australia by far and the largest market share and the biggest impact. So Australia Post have told us that they're working with various state governments and do not believe it will be the same arrangements as NZ. They're not committing to exactly what the arrangements will be, but they have said that they will not believe it will be the same arrangements as New Zealand. Now, we are unable to say at this point with any definition whether level 4 restrictions will be imposed in Australia. We have no guidance as to whether that will be the case, and we cannot confirm any more than what we've got from Australia Post, which is that they don't believe it will be the same arrangements as New Zealand. But whether that means there will be a complete restriction, we can't tell you that at this point in time, I'm afraid. So before we open it up to questions, and I want to get the questions flowing through, we've got some coming in, and Ali's going to lead those off shortly. But before we get to your questions today, I just wanted to talk through where some of this data came from. And so with Power Retail, we would normally charge subscription fees for members, and there are many members taking up the benchmarking product, but we want to open this up to everyone who's attending today for a 1-month trial access, so that there's no fees there for 1 month, because we do feel very strongly at the moment that you want access to what's happening in real time. You want visibility over exactly what's happening today, because the forecasts are out the window. We know that. We've already had a number of people that we've offered this to taking it up, and we welcome retailers to take this up. There's no catch. You can opt out at the end if you don't see that it's working for you, but we think it's really important right now to get real-time intelligence on what's happening daily in the market against known benchmarks. And so you can do that by visiting the website or sending an email to inquiries@powerretail.com.au, and we'll follow up with that later. That's not a pitch, that's just a genuine focus on trying to help the retail community by how you can use our benchmarking data to better make decisions and to better be informed on a daily basis of exactly what's happening in the overall market. And now I want to move on to what's next. So in terms of what's next, well, the only certainty is uncertainty. So all we can tell you is what we've seen to date, that consumers are certainly indicating that they're going to be spending their money online, which is natural. They're not going to go in stores, but they will be turning back the amount of money that they're spending overall, particularly on discretionary items. We can expect to see essentials continuing to surge over the next month as working from home is and social distancing and stay-at-home rules are enforced. We can't predict with any certainty whether or not we'll be able to move to level 4. We will be keeping everyone we can posted on developments there, and we're making those inquiries daily to make sure that we are the first to know, to be able to share that with our retail community, but we're not going to be able to tell you with any definition exactly what's happening there. So with that, I might transfer over to Ali, who will kick off the question for today. Thanks, Ali. Are you there?
Hi, Grant. Yes, I'm here. Thank you. It was a really interesting session. We've got heaps of questions. So one of them is about the data itself. And I was wondering if Mark could explain the source of the data and how accurate it is for the presentation that we've seen today.
Thanks, Ali. As you'd appreciate, this is a very important topic. So we've been at great pains to make sure that our data is accurate. So for the consumer data, what we've done is for the 2 previous weekends, we've conducted over 1,500 online shopper interviews. So weekend before last, 1,500 interviews. Last weekend, collating the results on Monday, another 1,500 interviews. Now, if we think that elections in Australia, the typical predictions are made on about 1,000 interviews across Australia, what we've done is we've spoken to 1,500 consumers or shoppers to get our results. So we're very comfortable that that data is very accurate and is reflecting what is really happening out there in the community.
Fantastic. Sorry about that. My screen just went blank. Okay. Well, it's very trustworthy to know that we provide incredible insights and amazing data, and it's all very trustworthy, so it's fantastic. We do have a question from Michael, and he asks, are there any trends around toy purchases or educational toys with parents spending more time with their children at home?
Yeah, my comment on that, there are going to be a few, sorry, Mark, classic webinar stuff. We're talking over one another. My comment on that, there will be a number of questions that we may not be able to answer right now, and we'll look into those for everyone who's asking those questions. We should, if we can, be able to find that data and bring it to you. And so we may reach out after this with responses to questions that we can't answer right now. Mark, I don't know if you can answer that, but I imagine it's going to take some time to pull together.
Unfortunately,
we've had a question.
Ali, I'll just pick up on Grant's comment there. Unfortunately, the detail of getting down to specific categories, even though we have a large number of interviews, we do have some limitations in how deeply we can delve into that. But as Grant said, we'll certainly follow up as best we can.
Brilliant. We do have a question from Nitesh as well, asking, where does the revenue data for the top 100 retailers come from?
Yeah, so that's put together by our analytics team. So part of that is that I think we didn't show revenue data from the top 100. We did show some traffic data, and that's working broadly with our partner SimilarWeb. So that's where that comes from, if that's what the reference is. The revenue data that we showed earlier is actually from our benchmarking tool, where we're working with, we've got dozens of retailers on the platform sharing there, and so it's a very broad cross section of retailers representing an overall sample. And so we use that as our revenue benchmarking data.
Wonderful. And we do have another question from Nathan.
Small, medium and large retailers, sorry, that's been weighted accordingly.
Fantastic. So a question from Nathan. Is it wise to prepare for impact if non-essential deliveries are stopped for e-commerce?
Well, absolutely, and that's a big part of this today is to prepare people for the worst case scenario. So we do have a grim reality, and if we look at our cousins across the ditch, they are in that world right now where the last resort for retail is e-commerce, and then when the last resort is suddenly shut off, that is the grim reality that we could face. Now, the government, I think, has been on the front foot in terms of trying to implement measures that they can use to assist, but I'm really, not qualified to comment on the overall economic impacts of what this will do, and I don't know that too many people are, because it's just unfolding so quickly, so fast, and having such catastrophic effects. But yes, you should have a scenario where if you were to face no sales for an extended period of time, and that your online channel is cut off as well as your offline channels, you need to plan for that possibility, absolutely, because we're seeing it happening in New Zealand.
Fantastic. We've also got a question from Judd Meat, and he asks, are retailers looking at modernizing business technology capability to enable omni-channel fulfillment?
Sorry, can you repeat that one, Ellie?
Absolutely. Are retailers looking at modernizing business technology capabilities to enable omni-channel fulfillment?
That's a fairly broad question, difficult, to answer. I am sure they are, is the short answer. But probably other priorities right now in terms of keeping the doors open.
If I could jump in there for a moment, if we go back to a slide where we talked about the operating strategies moving forward, we can see that while we've got 39% are delaying their capital expenditure, at least looking into the next few months, there are 41% who are seeking to improve their online offer. Now, we know that involves a whole lot of different activities, but part of that will be reducing lag times on sales, improving the effectiveness of their actual checkout processes. I think every retailer understands that in these difficult times, you have to make every little bit of the process work as best you possibly can. So I think there still will be a lot of activity by retailers working with what they've got. It just may be the big capital expenditure that they're holding off for a while.
Okay, we have a question from Wendy. When is the next session and when is the next weekly data available?
Yet to be determined, Wendy. So, we're looking at making these a regular thing. This was a one-off. This was certainly a reactive initiative in terms of we wanted Power Retail. We were getting asked all kinds of questions over the last few weeks from a broad cross-section of our community. So we wanted to bring some data together that we'd already been working on. We accelerated that and amplified that, and Mark and Dave and our whole team has worked pretty hard to bring this together. And we do have more that is going to be available and more that's going to be worked on in the coming weeks. As to when the next session is, we'll advise everyone as soon as we know ourselves, but we certainly want to make sure it's a meaningful follow-up to this with some really good insights and progressive insights as well. And we're inviting retailers to share more than ever what questions they want answered, so that we can do our prior research, get those answers up front, and so that next time it can be even more tailored to exactly what the community is what the community's pain points were. So it's great to see all these questions coming through. Are you there, Ali?
Hi, sorry, I was talking to no one then. We've had a few questions come through about sharing the deck at the end of the webinar. So we will be able to send off a copy of the actual recording itself so everyone can go over it again and have a listen, pause, do everything like that. So to everyone asking, should be fine as well. So we've had a comment, not so much a question, a comment from Sharon, and Sharon says, I'm in New Zealand, the situation is pretty bad, but we are hopeful. So I think that's an important thing to remember as well. And I think we've had time for one more question. So let's just, what tools or technologies are you seeing retailers use to facilitate employees working from home?
Yeah, I think if any industry is ready-made for it, e-commerce is well served with a lot of tools that are already in place. We happen to be neighbours with a very large retailer who I won't name, but all of their, or a significant portion of their staff relying on desktop computers, and so had to keep coming to work. So I think most e-commerce professionals are well suited to working remotely. That said, the bigger the organisation, the harder it can be to sometimes decouple from the mothership, particularly where there's legacy service and on-premise technology that's maybe old, maybe new, but certainly tied to the premises, makes it harder. But yeah, most I think would be pretty comfortable using tools like Google Hangouts and Slack and Zoom and all the other tools that are available to make remote working and the interactivity pretty natural. But yeah, there's certainly some of the larger multi-channel retailers that still may have some struggles making that quick transition to moving their entire workforce to remote. And also, you know, there's the warehouse workers to consider who still have to turn up every day to manage the online picking and packing and distribution. They may be picking from stores still happening, so those things are obviously not able to be done remotely. So we will wrap up there because we have gone over time. So I do want to thank everyone who's come along today. Yeah, this was pulled together with a mission to bring some critical information to the retail community. We hope you enjoyed it. We do think we had a big attendance. We can see a lot of questions have come through that you know, we won't get through in this session, but we will be following up with everyone after this session. And we hope to put on another session soon. Again, we want to make sure it's meaningful and valuable to the retail community, but we do thank you for your support, and we wish you all the best during this most turbulent of times. I mean, Power of Retail, we rely on the retail community being alive and vibrant, so we really want to work with you guys and make sure we can do what we can. Our mission is to stimulate e-commerce. That's what we aim to do, and we certainly welcome any suggestions for us on how we can better improve the e-commerce industry, because we all want to see the online retail community, the retail community at large, get back to its best after what is going to be a horrible time and a long road ahead to recovery. So thank you, everyone. Again, wish you all the best. We certainly hope it gets better, not worse, and we'll keep the information flowing your way. And thank you again for attending today.